I love it too. I mean, so I cut out gluten I guess in 2020 as a response to a thyroid issue that I was having, and I started taking some pills, and the pills didn't feel like they were working. But my general practitioner at the time was like, "Hey, this is something that you could do, right, to cut down on inflammation," and that was causing the hypothyroidism, and now I crave the things that the new habits that I've discovered, right? Like you're talking about with the foods you would choose to have out of a gas station. And so it's funny because like I too look to those things and want them and desire them. But I think about that just as it relates to sort of the general holistic life way of like the way water cuts through stone and you become ingrained in your habits and in your behavior. And if you can reroute it, or if you can work to reroute the water, like, and, you know, you will become ingrained in new habits and in new routines. And I too crave those foods. And people ask me sometimes, well, man, do you miss gluten? And I immediately talk about the things that I've learned relative to like my health situation and what it afforded me health-wise. And I don't miss it. And frankly, I crave the gluten-free versions of those things that I now eat daily or have in my bag, like, you know, these peanut butter pro bars, or these these raw pumpkin seed bars that have just like pumpkins and dates and chia seed. There's maybe like 5 ingredients. I legit want to eat them just so I can have more of them with
Yeah,
me, like you're talking about. Yeah.
dude.
Anyway, it's relatable.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I'm not absolutely gluten free. I just happen to not eat a lot of food with gluten in it. Like I try more than anything to like be aware of the amount of fat that I consume. And so when
Sure.
I reintroduced gluten and bread and stuff like that back into my diet, I found very quickly that without fat, it's fucking boring. Like a piece of bread on its own does not, unless my daughter and I bake a loaf of sourdough, but even then I want butter on it. You know what I mean? Like it by
Yeah. Yeah.
itself
Yeah.
is not doing it for me. Pasta with no sauce, because even the tomato sauce is loaded with oil. I can't mess with that. But the point of all of this was, at one point there was like, and this I discovered many years ago, like I'm going to eat pizza and I wanted to eat gluten-free pizza, and then it sucked. And I was like, this is a waste of time. I'm
Yeah.
not going to eat
Yeah.
this. And then this place popped up in Los Angeles called Lucifer's Pizza, and I had a piece of their gluten-free. And honestly, I crave that more than almost
Yeah.
any other pizza. Like my favorite pizza was always Joe's in New York, and I'd rather have Lucifer's gluten-free than
Like a
Joe's.
classic $1.25 slice, like, you know, like a
Yeah.
greasy slice where you can drip it and like,
Oh
or, you know, you
yeah.
could, yeah, you can't
Amazing.
get it out of your clothing ever. Yeah.
Right.
I
Which
mean,
my
it's, man,
kids
it's,
are always patting dry, and I'm like, you're getting rid of the best part.
yeah, the best part, you're supposed to drink that. Like, don't
Yeah.
you know? Like,
Make a shot
I
out of
mean,
it.
this is like, man, pizza, man, gluten-free pizza for the most part is terrible, right? Like, and there's a pizza, well, they actually have several locations now here in Nashville, but started in Brooklyn, and we found it when we lived in Brooklyn, called Emmys, and I think here they're called Emmy Squared. But whatever flour they're using for their gluten-free version is like, I crave it, and I share it with everybody who's like who's like, oh, I'm gonna know the difference and I'm gonna not like this. And I go, how about you just like, what do you think about that? And they're like, oh man, that pizza is some of the best pizza I've ever had. And I'm like, well, there you go. Like, don't, you know, don't yuck someone's yum, you know,
Right.
like just because
Yeah.
you don't know what it is. So anyway, I think about all this stuff all the time. I mean, it's sitting here like, this is way off topic, but I like, um, way off topic. Well, I'm talking more and more about food, but like, I think about like gluten in France, and I'm not celiac, but again, this was like a response to this thyroid issue that I was going through. But gluten in Europe, and their just the food processing generally, from literally soil to table, is I can eat all of the bread there, all the croissant, all the baguettes, like all the pastries, and in most of Europe, even in England, and the food is just generally cleaner. And I've thought about that endlessly. And granted, I'm not celiac, so I have a gluten intolerance, I guess you could say it. And anyway, it's remarkable to me that like I can eat all of the food in Europe, and I can't eat any of that stuff here in the States. And I've done a little research. Certainly, I know nothing compared to you and what you know about like your knowledge is far more vast. At least based on what I know from having listened to your podcast and having knowing you a little bit. It boggles my mind the differences in our food qualities and processes, you know, from Europe to the States, and
Yeah.
that to me was like an insane sign.